before we do that, there's a couple little things we need to go over. First of all, let me introduce the commission. To my immediate right is Senate President Bill Ferguson. To my immediate left is House Speaker Adrian Jones. To her left is House Majority Leader Eric Liedtke. And on the other side of the table next to the President is President Pro Tem Melanie Griffith. And sitting in for Senator Simon Ayer is Senator Ed Riley. Delegate Buckle is not here tonight. And I am Carl Arrow, chairing this. As many of you may know, I've been through redistricting a few times. Is that better? Okay. All right. So let me just quickly point out a couple of things. Can I take it out? I can drop it later. First of all, redistricting is essential, and it's also very complicated. Some people think it might be simple, but it's not. Our primary objective really is one person, one vote, and providing voters with the opportunity to vote for candidates of their choice. And as we all know, population generally increases, but it doesn't do it evenly. Some areas gain, some areas lose, and it's really not a matter of gain or loss by itself, but how that happens in relation to everybody else. There are obviously legal and constitutional criteria that we have to follow in drawing maps. They often conflict, and they're somewhat different with respect to legislative and congressional districting. There is on our website an analysis of those standards. If anybody's interested in taking a look at them, you can find them there. Also, I'd point out that the diversity of Maryland's population and its geography, both physical and political, are factors that add to the complexity of this task. And the Maryland General Assembly does have a constitutional responsibility to act, and this commission, as I indicated at the beginning, was established to develop these plans as well as to listen, to get your input so that we can develop plans. I'm going to do a quick little briefing. Our analyst from Legislative Services was not able to be here tonight. You see the slides behind me. You can hit the first one. This is the adjusted population. And by adjusted population, under the law, we're required to reallocate prison populations to their last known address. And so there were also prisoners that were from out of state that are incarcerated here, and those are excluded from the numbers. This is the same process we followed 10 years ago when the law was first implemented. So what you're seeing is a Maryland statewide population of 6,175,403. This means that an ideal congressional district will be 771,925, but since we have 8 districts, we're going to have a variance of probably one person somewhere. Senatorial district, there are 47 of those districts, as you all know, and the number is 131,391. Again, this is the ideal. This is what you get when you divide the state's population by the number of districts. If 2-member district delegate districts, which can be created, they would sit at 87,594, and single-member delegate districts, 43,797. Maryland's somewhat unique. Many states have separate plans for their House and Senates, but we have the 47 senatorial or legislative districts from which we elect 1 senator and 3 delegates, and they're nested. So it's basically a little easier to draw, but probably no less complicated. Hit the next slide. So this shows state growth by county from 2010 to 2020. And I think the main point here is that the Eastern Shore counties gained population overall, but the region did not grow as much as in comparison to other regions of the state. And you can see on the map that the darker the color, the higher the growth as a percentage. The Shore region as a whole, you can hit the next slide, Ralph. The Shore region as a whole has lost the equivalent of 1/5 of a district, legislative district. As you can see in 2010, the share of legislative districts was 3.65, and this is if you take the entire population of the Eastern Shore, divide by the ideal number, and this is what you get. In 2020, we're down to 3.47. So it's a decline. How significant a decline is difficult to say theoretically. It really comes down to once you start trying to move things a bit. You can see that on this map that the red shows these are districts that have population below the ideal. And so you can see that those districts in the far south are going to have to push to the north. It's just inevitable in that respect. And I think that's basically, the last slide shows that, that the growth in central Maryland outpaced the growth on the Eastern Shore and pretty much everywhere in the state. So balancing the uneven population growth on the Eastern Shore will require, as I just said, a shifting portion of District 35 away from the shore and into Hartford, and as everything moves up. So this is the essential problem that we face, adjusting things and trying to reach that substantially equal population number. So that's what we have in front of us. And at this point, we're going to move to public testimony. I remind you that if you are going to be speaking on only congressional or legislative, you get 3 minutes. If you're going to speak on both, you're going to get 5. And we will have the clock moving. And so I urge you, please try to fit everything within the time period. I have a list here of people who signed up in advance. I'm just going to go down the list. Microphone's down in front, and so we're going to get started. The first person on my list is Judy Wickstead. Judy Wickstead. I'm sorry? Oh, virtually. Okay, so she's not, we aren't going to be able to hear from her then, I guess. Diane Waterman. Right, yeah, I think she did. Yeah, please.
Yep, thanks. Okay. Good evening, Chairman Aro and esteemed members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Diane Waterman, and I have been a resident of Queen Anne's County for little over 36 years. I am a mother, a wife, and a small business owner in the county. By no means do I want to take anything away from the process that you all are doing, but I would like to start by saying we also, as I know you are aware, have the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission is also holding hearings and doing maps as well. And I would urge you all to follow their lead on what they are doing, in that an abundance of Marylanders, a majority of Marylanders who have been polled, prefer and hope and want our maps to be drawn in a fair, nonpartisan, politically blind, or as politically blind and nonpartisan as could possibly be manner. And to that extent, I would encourage you all to either use their maps or follow along in their suit. I am speaking today both on congressional and legislative, and our current congressional maps have this distinction of being probably the most gerrymandered in the country. In drawing your maps for the congressional districts, I encourage you to follow the guidelines of being substantially equal population and being compact in form and giving respect to natural boundaries and political subdivision boundaries. We really do not want to have our maps look the way they do now, and I know that we can do better on that. Moving on to the legislative districts, they too should have a population as close as possible to being equal. We all know that that can't be totally equal, but as close as possible, where we currently have some population shifts of some being as much as 4.3% over ideal population and some under 4.4. If you add that together from one extreme to the other, that's almost a 9 percentage point difference in the size of a district. When several districts in a region are formed by underpopulation or overpopulation, you create a disadvantage for those who have more members, more constituents in a district than those who have less constituents in a district. Excuse me, lost my place here. So it's important that each district be as closely as possible so that all constituents get the same level of representation and the same level of their vote being one person, one vote when it comes time for election. Additionally, I would implore that you all, or ask that you all sincerely consider implementing single-member districts. Currently, as I know you all know, we have some districts that have 3 members, some that have that are multi-member districts with 1 district with 3, some with 2, some with single-member districts. Having single-member districts throughout our state would ensure, and single-member districts of closely, very, very identical population, would ensure that all citizens receive the same level of service from their delegate, the same level of representation, and as well, when you have multiple members in one district, there's a little bit of confusion about who your delegate would actually be. Having single-member districts would alleviate that problem. For instance, here in where we are now, 36th district, my district, we have 3 delegates. We have 3 wonderful delegates who do a great job, but you tend to think of one of them being your delegate, but don't know that you could go to the delegate from Kent County or the delegate from Caroline County, thinking it's only your delegate that lives in your county that you could go to. Eliminating multi-member districts would alleviate this problem. Anyway, and also I realize that implementing these single-member districts is much easier said than done. As you talked in your presentation about the changing nature of our population shift over the last 10 years and the nature of the smaller counties having smaller populations, it's going to be more challenging, but I have every faith and confidence that you all can make sure that we have districts that are of equal population or nearly equal population in single-member districts. Thank you for this time to speak with you. I have also submitted written testimony, so that might be a little more concise than my ramblings here. Thank you again, and that concludes my testimony.
Thank you very much. Next on my list is Sherry McNett. Sherry McNett. I'm sorry? Is she here? Oh. Is Senator Eeckert here? Would you like to speak to us?
Thank you very much, Chairman Arrow and President Ferguson, Speaker Adrian Jones, and all my other colleagues up there. Hey there. Glad to be here. Sorry I got rerouted coming from College Park tonight. Senator Addy Eeckert. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my concerns about redistricting, and many of you have heard from me before on this. First of all, I think it's really important that we're fair, contiguous, and equitable. Try not to overload one district from another. I think that's really, really important, and I'll talk about what happens with that in a minute. As much as possible, look at the natural boundaries. On the Eastern Shore, we have a lot of counties, big counties and little counties, and I know it's difficult with the changing population to keep counties together, but they inevitably wind up getting chopped up. And so we wind up having a boundary down a street, and, you know, I've been through this, will be my 3rd redistricting, correct, Mr. Arrow? And this side of the street will be in one district, 10 years, and the next year it'll be in the other side of the street. And that gets very confusing for constituents. And what I have found in my door-to-door just information and letting people know who I am and what I can do for them, people just get very disenfranchised then with voting because they don't know who their people are, or they get to know one person and then they don't hear from the other person who is now representing them or their other representative or delegate. So I would consider as much as possible that every county have a resident delegate. And again, I think that logistically might be an issue too, but I think it's something to take a look at because most of the counties want to make sure that they have somebody who lives in their district representing them. And ideally, if you start from the outermost parts of the state that you will and move forward, consider single-member districts. That way, it's easier for minority populations to have good representation. And I worked on that at the congressional level when we went through this 10 years ago. So I just wanted to share, it's difficult representing and when districts that get chopped up. And let me share a little bit about that. For instance, in Dorchester County, we have a one-member district, a single-member district, and then we have a multi-member district. It's impossible for a minority member in our single-member district to get elected because the bulk of the population in that single-member district are in another county. So when somebody in the single-member district in Dorchester County runs for office, the deck's stacked right out of the gate. Likewise, in this time when the election went through and the boundaries were shifted, we wound up having 3 delegates from who are pretty close to each other in residency from one county. And that meant then that Dorchester County did not have a resident delegate. So there may be some of those fine points that you can do absolutely nothing about, but I think it's worth considering because when you have more delegates from one of the geographic areas within a county and none from the other end of the county, it makes a big difference in adequate representation when we're talking about growing minority populations that I believe need adequate service right across the board. So just things to consider as you're doing your work. And thank you so much for holding this here on the Eastern Shore. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person on my list who also did submit written testimony is Rebecca Flora.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Rebecca Flora. I live in Chestertown, Maryland. The redistricting of the state of Maryland is very important, and I'd like to thank you all for considering thoughtfully the utilization of data and public content, among other factors, and there's many factors. You have a very difficult job, there is no doubt about it. I'd like to sort of present sort of a whole other perspective, I guess, to this, in that I'm here to strongly recommend the Eastern Shore as a region be included in redistricting map, both congressionally and legislatively, of how you look at this, and that it's direct association with Anne Arundel County. Even though we're separated by water, we have a lot of commonalities in many different ways, and I'd like to share some of that. So my recommendation is based on 4 key indicators that were selected based on my professional capacity as an urban planner and an economic development professional, and as a resident and business owner with direct experience with each indicator. First, the economic development side. Maryland Department of Labor data indicates that 12.1% of Eastern Shore residents are employed in Anne Arundel County. That serves as the #1 Western Shore destination for work-related commuters from the Eastern Shore. There is clearly a strong association between the Eastern Shore and Anne Arundel-related business and workforce development interests that impact our shared regional economy. Secondly, connectivity. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge is the primary connection route for the Eastern Shore Marylanders to traverse to the Western Shore for not only work, but also medical and other basic needs that are not available or are in limited supply on the Eastern Shore. This vehicular connector that facilitates travel between the 2 shores is a shared asset that brings with it multiple set of complex issues associated with traffic flow, safety, and environmental concerns that are common to those located on both sides of the primary connector. Traffic count studies indicate that more than 27 million vehicles crossed the Bay Bridge in 2017, a 325% increase since 1974 when the second span opened. Any future direction taken with the Bay Bridge to alleviate traffic or improve transit, cycling, or ferry options are most directly shared by those on each side of the bridge and need to be connected in terms of how we're represented. Thirdly, the Bay vessel usage. As a recreational sailor and kayaker, I am directly familiar with the water-related values shared between Anne Arundel County, with the largest number of vessels registered in Maryland, and our Eastern Shore boating community that combined has the second largest number of vessel registrations. While the Bay Bridge may serve as our primary vehicular connector, our water-based connection is also centered around Anne Arundel, not only for recreation, but also for commercial fishing operations. Fourthly, environmental. The Chesapeake Bay is considered by many Marylanders to be our most precious natural asset. Eastern Shore residents and business owners understand and treasure this asset that sustains complex ecosystems and livelihoods and attracts visitors to our unique Bay region. Anne Arundel County has the highest number of Western Shore miles of Bay shoreline, making it our primary partner in protecting and appropriately utilizing this great natural resource. In closing, I'd like to add that these are just a few data points to consider. I know you're considering many, but I really wanted to bring another perspective to this. They are not based on exhaustive research. However, they do indicate a strong connection between the Eastern Shore communities and our most central and proximate neighbor to the west, Anne Arundel County. These factors should be taken into consideration by the Commission. I provided you with footnotes and references to all of the data I've provided in determining a redistricting map that will best serve the Eastern Shore communities in all of Maryland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next person on my list is Kathleen Bangert.
Good evening. I'm the only one speaking. Madam Speaker, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Commissioners, we appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of 3 Eastern Shore chapters of the League of Women Voters, Queen Anne's County, Kent County, and the Mid-Shore, which includes Caroline, Dorchester, and Talbot counties. My name is Kathleen Bangert, and I am co-convener of the Mid-Shore League. With me tonight are Barbara Fluke, who is the co-president of the Kent County League, and Elizabeth Hammond, the vice president of the Queen Anne's County League. We commend President Ferguson and Speaker Jones for appointing this bipartisan commission and deeply appreciate the willingness of all commissioners to take on the weighty and time-consuming responsibility of creating fair and impartial maps. We have 4 brief recommendations to share with you tonight, and these echo suggestions you have heard from other League members at previous hearings. First, to promote transparency, we urge that the public be able to observe the Commission draw and evaluate proposed maps. Next, it is important that draft maps be available for meaningful public review and comment prior to the special session in December, and preferably not later than mid-November. Third, as you draw lines for legislative districts, we ask you to maintain the flexibility of using both single and multi-member districts. It is our position that the right mix of the two helps to promote full minority representation, preserve political and community boundaries, and encourage a more diverse candidate pool. Finally, please continue to remind the public that they still have time to submit written comments. The Eastern Shore is a big place. Many of our neighbors who would have liked to participate in person tonight were not able to be here, especially those on the lower shore who have an hour or more drive. In conclusion, those of us who make our homes east of the Bay count ourselves fortunate to live in a region of such rich natural beauty and growing cultural diversity. But too often it seems that there are two Eastern Shores, the one that Forbes magazine celebrates as the New Hamptons and the one where poultry workers are at ground zero for the COVID epidemic. As you literally draw the map for our shared civic lives over the next decade, you can help to bring us closer to the ideal of one shore where everyone, no matter their zip code, has equal representation in the halls of Congress and the corridors of the General Assembly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tara Newman Bell.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Arrow. And as a member of the League of Women Voters, I support what was just shared as well. And to the esteemed members of the commission. My name is Tara Newman Bell. My husband, Dr. James C. Bell, and I live in Maryland and are residents of Talbot County. We currently reside in the 1st Congressional District and 37B Maryland Legislative District. I have personally lived in that area for over 50 years. I have an active membership with an organization that was founded upon and continues to lead the way on community matters, public service, and social action initiatives. As we know, based on the 2020 census data, Maryland's population grew 7% to 6.2 million last decade. Specific to my county, which is Talbot County, the total population decreased a little to 37,526, down by 256 numerically, or 0.7% compared to 2010. Specific to how the census data will be leveraged in redistricting, I would like this commission to 1, ensure fair and transparent process, 2, that you consider and respect any community of interest maps, and 3, ensure that the voting power and participation is not diluted in communities of color. The manner in which districts are drawn affects every political issue, from the economy to healthcare to public education. Therefore, I urge you to continue to be transparent and to ensure a fair process. I want to ensure that districts that are represented by politicians that understand and will respect the wishes of the communities that they serve. When maps are manipulated for personal or political gain, it prevents residents from having our voices heard on policies that affect us. I'd again ask that the commission consider and respect any community interest maps that are submitted. A good redistricting process will be open and transparent, allowing communities to give input. I ask that rationale to explain why the maps were drawn be provided. Additionally, in order to build trust that maps have not been unfairly manipulated, I'd ask that the commission not draw maps that favor political partisanship. Finally, any maps that are drawn should be mindful not to dilute the voting power and political representation, again, of communities of color. Maryland has had its share of critique about the last redistricting process, but I want to ensure that my voice is considered to ensure fair congressional maps and that there is no racial gerrymandering that will dilute the voting power of African Americans or other communities of color. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. Sonja Whited? Sorry if I didn't get your name right.
You're fine, thank you. I think there was written testimony too, and it's going to be a little bit different, so I just wanted to let you know. But good evening, my name is Sonja Whited, and I am a 16-year resident of Wicomico County, Maryland. I served as the 2020 Complete Count Committee, co-chair for the 2020 census, currently serve on the Wicomico County Decennial Charter Review Committee, and am an active member of other community organizations. As an involved and concerned citizen, I have 2 requests. I ask that you maintain the multi-member districts in your map drawing considerations and consider another single-member district on the Eastern Shore to reflect the continually increasing diversity occurring in the state, including the Eastern Shore. Though these may seem like opposing asks, we need representatives to address the variety of issues that impact the well-being of every member of our diverse communities. Residents benefit by having multi-member districts where delegates serve on different committees and provide adequate representation to all locally and in Annapolis. Multi-member districts are an opportunity to collaborate rather than divide our communities, where our elected officials represented every member of the communities that they were elected to serve. In Wycomico County, we ensure issues like education, I cannot see with these glasses, I'm so sorry. Education, broadband, environment, and others can be addressed without overburdening one representative in the vast geographical area that is the Eastern Shore, thus offering a chance to have the concerns of the community met. In fact, I recently attended a Wycomico County Council meeting with an Eastern Shore delegation presentation where the collective group of officials from different political parties presented on these areas passionately because these elected officials are personally on many of these committees and are able to cover a wide range of shore residents' needs by working together across their shared areas. Also, in communication with others and in observations of our community interaction with our officials, it is important to also consider another single-member district on the Eastern Shore to truly represent our diverse population, one that is growing different demographics, including languages, nationalities, races, family sizes, etc. Representation matters, and we are at the point where carving out one minority district represented by delegates Cherise Sample Hughes is not enough to truly address the concerns of other minority and sometimes marginalized communities. I am hopeful that this critical district could be part of the fair map drawing process versus a court case. In conclusion, for our state legislative maps, please maintain multi-member districts and an additional single-member district to ensure fair and equitable representation for our increasingly diverse residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Patrick Firth.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony at tonight's hearing. My name is Patrick Firth, and I am a lifelong resident of Trapp, Maryland, and a proud graduate of the Talbot County Public Schools system. Tonight, I would like to speak to Chesapeake Redistricting, a Better Maryland's proposed state legislative and congressional district maps. Simply put, these maps are much better suited to represent the communities and cultures of our vast and diverse region. At the federal level, the currently drawn map for Maryland's 1st Congressional District is an absolute embarrassment. Very few other congressional districts across the nation have been drawn so haphazardly and with such disdain for the people within. First off, the partisan split does not just ensure a Republican representative, it ensures the culling of any moderate from either party to see any electoral victory. We all know the result, a locked and loaded congressman with dangerous and violent tendencies. Secondly, while the current map keeps the Eastern Shore whole, it nonsensically includes Baltimore County and even stretches as far as Carroll County. We all know and care about the environment, but surely western, mid-shore regions, such as parts of Anne Arundel, have much more in common with us prioritizing stewardship of the Chesapeake Bay than our northern friends. Crabb MD's map addresses this concern and creates a competitive, fair, and representative 1st Congressional District. In terms of our state legislative districts, it's time for the General Assembly to recognize the changing population and growing diversity of the Eastern Shore. Salisbury, Fruitland, and Princess Anne, for example, have all become minority-majority cities, turning District 38B into what we would like to call a college district, stretching roughly from Salisbury University to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, would provide effective representation. Further, including northern Somerset in 38B would lead to the high likelihood of another minority-majority district on the shore in the very near future. Moving Del Mar to 37B, though you could also put it in 37A, would allow you to make the above changes to District 38 due to the need to cut the population. This also makes sense if you consider the cultural and economic differences between Del Mar and its neighboring municipalities. It simply fits better in 37B. Local to myself, the population changes around the region necessitate the creation of District 37C, which would be composed of Talbot County and parts of Caroline. Much like how Carroll and Worcester have different priorities, so do Talbot and Wicomico, a drastically expanding economic and population hub for the shore. Certainly, Talbot would be much better suited in a district that simply allows our delegate to focus on the priorities and needs of Talbot and Caroline. It's concerning to see no Eastern Shore representation on this panel. I would not dare decide on consequential maps that should be drawn based on the population, as well as the cultural ties and heritage of Western Shore counties without close consultation with Western Shore colleagues such as yourselves. You need to know the people and the places to effectively draw our maps. You can't get that perspective when you're separated by a bay. Further, I should note that while you can basically trip and stumble from one hearing to the next on the Western Shore, most are about 30 minutes apart, someone would have to leave work at 4 p.m. to get here from Crisfield, even earlier to get here from Ocean City. And yet here we are at tonight's only redistricting hearing for the Eastern Shore, a 2-hour drive for many. In spite of this either purposeful or simply negligent disenfranchisement, we are here. I should note my frustrations are with the process, not with the commission members themselves. I thank you for doing this important duty. In the interest of summing up my final thoughts, District 38B should become a diverse college district stretching roughly from Salisbury University to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. To accommodate this, Del Mar must be moved to District 37B. Talbot and Caroline County should become the newly established District 37C, and the commission should recommend a fair, competitive congressional district. We cannot progress as a 21st century multiracial democracy without a clear, tangible investment in representative election districts. These maps are a forward-thinking, competitive, and equitable solution to ensuring that every voice is heard and has a fair shot at being represented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person we have is Michelle Johnson. Michelle Johnson, there she is.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, Madam Speaker, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, and Commission members. Welcome to the Eastern Shore, and thank you for crossing the bridge and allowing us an opportunity to testify in person. My name is Michelle Johnson, and I am a Talbot County resident. With a master's degree in planning and 15 years as a professional planner, I've spent much time over the years wondering about election district maps that make no sense. Perhaps you do not know that here on the Eastern Shore, we have diverse communities, some with minority majorities, and we have diverse college towns. We have communities of wealth, and we have communities of poverty. And some of our communities are growing while others are shrinking. I support competitive and fair congressional and state election districts. I'm a resident of District 37B, which stretches from the Chesapeake Bay to the Delaware state line and includes all or part of 4 counties from just below the Queen Anne's County line to the outskirts of the city of Salisbury. Perhaps 37B covers the most land area of any state district in Maryland. And we elect 2 delegates who are not allowed by law to live in the same county, though it is unclear to me whether both represent us. District 37B really makes no sense. I support all of Crab MD's proposals that Patrick Firth just presented, including 3 single-member districts, 37A, B, and C, allowing for a smaller 37C that includes all of Talbot County and some of Caroline.
I also support the proposal for District 38B with Salisbury, Fruitland, Princess Anne, and Northern Somerset County. Regarding our congressional district, District 1, do you know that Pocomoke City and Tawnytown are nearly 190 miles apart? The same distance as traveling from Baltimore to New York. The Bay Bridge connects us to Anne Arundel, where many of our residents work, shop, play, or go for health care. It makes more sense to pick up population in counties across the Bay Bridge than in Carroll and Baltimore counties. As you complete the important work of the Commission, which will determine our districts through 2030, I ask you to please allow the Eastern Shore competitive and fair districts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Yomidi Odetola. Did I get that right? Odetola from Salisbury University. Okay, we'll move on. Richard Behrmann. Sarah Gavian. Oh, there he is. Sorry, Ms. Behrmann.
Well, it isn't going to go up. Thank you very much. My name is Richard Behrmann. I live in Dorchester County. Previously, I lived in Wicomico County. I come before you today to make a simple plea: restore fairness and competitiveness to Congressional District 1. I have lived in District 1 since 1989, 32 years. I have come to know and love the Eastern Shore, its people, their ways, their land, and their water. It is my home. In 2010, following the census, the first district was redistricted and we lost the 50-50 split that had made us home to a 9-term moderate Republican congressman. The new District 1, rather than picking up a small amount of Anne Arundel County, like the Eastern Shore, as you have heard, home to people who love water, ran a long tendril halfway across the state through Harford, Baltimore, and Carroll counties, scooping up little pockets of suburban Republican voters who would assure the first district would be a safe Republican seat. And so it has been for 10 long years. Our moderate congressman lost a primary to a Republican extremist, member of the Freedom Caucus, who lost his first general election but has won 5 terms since and only has to worry about an even more extreme Republican unseating him. That is no way to run a good government. Legislators, please avoid stacking the deck when you create districts following the 2020 census. Marylanders would like to see compact, contiguous, culturally connected districts. There are undoubtedly many models for this, many maps, but let me refer to 2 for your consideration. 1, a group of Eastern Shore men and women operating under the name CRAB MD, Citizens for Redistricting a Better Maryland, have developed a model which returns to the pre-2010 census, combining our 9 Eastern Shore counties with some of Anne Arundel and Howard. This model was just presented to you. 2, David Wasserman, an analyst with the prestigious Cook Report, has drawn a similar model, which also harkens back to pre-2010 days, with the shore picking up parts of Anne Arundel County again. His analysis can be found at the Cook Report, admittedly behind a paywall, but you can see it in an article in the Washington Post, which, if you have my testimony in writing, is written there for you. What's most interesting is that both of these models produce less tortuous, less detached, less culturally chaotic districts. In other words, they produce compact, contiguous, and culturally connected districts as a district should be. It is possible to have two minority-majority districts as well, which would be emblematic of our state as a bastion of tolerance and diversity. However, when engineering election districts, to paraphrase the great architect Mies van der Rohe, less is more. Legislators, please keep it simple and earn our gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah Gavian.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Masks. Good evening. My name is Sarah Gavian. I am a resident of Dorchester County, and I've come to reiterate and underscore some of the points that have been made by other speakers. I'd like first to speak and remind the Commission, as you know, that the Eastern Shore is a huge area of low density with a mix of urban and rural populations and growing cultural diversity. First, speaking to the congressional map, as I have submitted with my testimony, I would like to support the maps created by CRAB MD, Citizens or Chesapeake for Redistricting a Better Maryland. As you've heard, we are requesting fair, competitive districts that are compact, contiguous, and culturally connected. We would like to return to maps along the line of the pre-2010 borders, and as others have said, basically reconnect to Anne Arundel and parts of Howard counties rather than Carroll and Baltimore, and basically bring us closer around the bay and the bridge. On the legislative side, I would also like to support CRAB's efforts to create single-member districts and add some that would allow us to be more culturally diverse, specifically the 38B that Patrick Firth spoke about. There are other changes that come, as you've said in the original presentation, because of population shifts that you have to map up from the south because of the edge of the state, and those are described in the maps that I have submitted as part of my testimony. The basic point here is that we have representative, equitable election districts, and that we do have a fair chance to have all political parties represented in our legislature and Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have two people whose last name is Hyman. Did they want to come together? I have Naomi and Bob.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to address the Commission. My name is Naomi Hyman, and I am a resident of Talbot County. I'm speaking tonight in support of CRAB MD's proposals for new legislative districts on the Eastern Shore, maps which I submitted earlier today. Others have already addressed the specifics and the reasoning behind these maps, so I will confine my comments to the importance of them. I have lived, worked, and played on the Eastern Shore for more than 40 years, from Betterton to Berlin, from Chestertown to Crisfield. In that time, I've seen a lot of change. This is not the shore I first knew. The demographics have changed, the issues have changed, and the climate, both politically and environmentally, have changed dramatically. Please don't let your assumptions about us, and I am well aware of the fact that there is no one from the shore on your commission to challenge them. Please do not let your assumptions drive your decision-making. The Eastern Shore, the state of Maryland, and indeed our nation as a whole, cannot progress as a diverse, multi-ethnic democracy without a clear, tangible investment in representative districts. CRAB MD's maps look to the future, are competitive and equitable, and can ensure that every Eastern Shore voice is heard, and that we all have a genuinely fair shot at being well represented. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ronald Walker. Okay, you submitted. We'll have it up here if you did submit it. Okay. Kurt Retzema. Did I get that right? Retzema.
Good evening, and I want to really thank you for coming. I know it's your job, but I can imagine that on a Monday night there may well have been other things you would have liked to do with your time, so we really do appreciate you coming. I'm Kurt Retzema, and my home is in Oxford, Maryland. I wanted to speak to both sets of issues, both the congressional, legislative, and Maryland MD1. First of all, with regard to the General Assembly legislative, as is obvious, as you've already stated, and many other speakers have as well, the demographics have changed to the Eastern Shore. Some of those changes are subtle, and some are pretty obvious, but taken together, they're all pretty complicated. This is my first foray into trying to understand the whole redistricting process, so I'm not going to pretend that I deeply understand those changes myself. I do believe that the CRAB MD group has taken a shot at really trying to understand that, and I would just ask for your consideration that you take their map seriously and take a look at what they've done. With regard to Maryland MD1, I want to speak to what I see the big picture issues here. I really feel that there are two big factors affecting where we're going with MD1. One, of course, is the United States Congress itself, and the fact that in the current political environment, every seat counts. It really does. You can look at that from a number of different perspectives, but it's obvious, and we all know it, and every seat really does count. Therefore, we're asking, as many other speakers have said, for just a fair shot at a competitive district. For me, there's an even bigger, longer-term issue at play, however, and one of the speakers very eloquently talked about that. That's the attack on our democracy by extremism. It's coming from a lot of different directions, and there's a lot of drivers of that extremism. A lot of those drivers, I think most of us would probably say, are outside of our control. Factors like social media, political, economic, national leadership, et cetera, probably none of us in this room can do very much about that. There is one factor, though, already alluded to, that you do have control over. To the extent that we have districts that are not competitive, the office holder simply does not have to play to or nod to the middle, to the moderates, and is driven by the more extreme parts of the party. I believe that's what's happening in Maryland 1, and I'm simply asking that given the attack on our democracy, having lived most of my life overseas in the Foreign Service, I've lived under authoritarian governments, I've seen how those things work. I'm deeply alarmed about what's happening in our country, and I think we can do something about it by having a fair shot at making Maryland, the first district, competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last person I have on my list is a Sam Harvey, signed up this evening.
Evening, members of the commission. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I will be very brief. I have a 4:30 a.m. start time coming up quick. I come this way every day. I just thought I'd swing by here on my way back to Wicomico County, where I'm a resident of District 37A, and I love my city. Been there probably 15 years. I made the big move over from Sussex County, Delaware, so from this area all my life. And I love the ideas that are put forward here by the Citizens Redistricting a Better Maryland, so I just wanted to echo the comments that were made by so many here tonight. I love the idea of the 38B district that's been proposed, and I love what's been said about trying to make Congressional District 1 more fair any which way you can. You're going to have to take a bite westward or northwestward somewhere anyway, so why not make it some kind of fight anyway, some kind of contest there in District 1. That would be wonderful. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I don't have anyone else signed up. I just want to point out in closing that if you have general questions, there are a couple places you can look. For general questions, look under redistricting LRAC at mlis.state.md.us. That's on the General Assembly's website. To submit testimony, it was BLRAC at, again, mlis.state.md.us. And to submit maps, you would send them as well, maps_LRAC at mlis.state.md.us. We have what you've submitted tonight, and we'll be working pretty hard over the next couple of weeks. So thank you all for being here. It's always nice to come to the Eastern Shore.